The voice of Husker Nation is on the air. This is Hail Varsity Radio. Insight, opinion, expertise, along with the biggest names talking Nebraska sports. Join in with the show at 402-489-1240 or 1-800-825-5865. Now, here are your hosts, Chris Schmidt and Elijah Herbel.
Welcome to it. Great to be back with you on a Monday. It's Hail Varsity Radio. We're presented by Currency for all your equipment financing needs. Go Currency. Chris Schmidt, Elijah Herbel. Hope your weekend was awesome. And you maybe made a little money with the Derby or maybe some NBA wagers. I know that some crow may be eaten by the end of this week for one of us with his NBA team.
Crow has already been eaten, Schmitty. Crow has already been eaten.
You just may be asking for seconds.
Yeah, I already had myself a full dinner, so we'll see what's left in the fridge whenever I get home tomorrow
night. A wise man once told me, that wise man being named Joe Papa, wait till after you win to talk your bleep.
Well, the Nuggets had already won 2 of the 4.
So you figured by math, even if it gets a little hairy, we'll still win in 4. We'll still win in 6, huh?
That was kind of my thought.
That was before the last 2 games in the Valley of the Sun.
Because my thought was, well, 2 games have been played. The Suns would now have to win 4 of the next 5 to advance in this series. And based on how the first 2 games had gone, I went, bah. They might get 1 or 2, but 4 of the next 5, that's a tall task. And then, little did I know, the next 2 games, it'd be Jokic, the one-man scoring explosion, the only way the Nuggets were able to stay in that game, and too much Devin Booker, too much Kevin Durant. And maybe the loss of Chris Paul is the best thing that could have happened to the Suns.
That is my theory. But
with all that in mind, yeah, it was a rough weekend for me, Schmitty.
We'll get into some NBA here in about 40 minutes or so. Football still on our mind. You have DraftKings out with the win totals for all of the Big Ten. We'll tell you about that here in a moment. Some recruiting thoughts, some Nebraska baseball on the docket. We'll check in with Mark Waller, longtime head coach of Lincoln North Star, also at Holdridge, assistant at Elkhorn South, part of the Lincoln Football Coaches Association. Their junior day recruiting fair is going on tonight at 6 out at Firethorn in Lincoln. We'll catch up with Coach Waller, and it's just an awesome showcase for colleges and kids to get together and further some just fantastic careers from the high school level to the college level. So Coach Waller with us in about 20 minutes. In hour 2, Mr. Blackshirt, Charlie McBride, a Monday with Charlie. We'll get Coach's take here on some of the win projections. And more importantly here, what is the image and perception of Nebraska? I think it's a little different because of the coaching change right now. I don't know that Nebraska's viewed as a win or a maybe anymore with Rule. We'll get there in a moment. Also, Jay Moore, Blackshirt Husker NFLer, and Big Red Wrap-Up. Jay will join us as part of that Blackshirt Hour at 5:20. Numbers for you to get in at 489-1240. 489-1240. You can email Chris at hailvarsity.com. And as always, be a part of the stream. Can watch the show, the Hail Varsity Radio Twitter feed at HVarsity Radio. Give that a follow. Watch the show there. Watch Coffee and Cream with Damon and Andrew weekday mornings from 7 to 10. Also, the Hail Varsity YouTube channel. Log on there and participate if you like. So let's get into the perception part of this discussion as it relates to win total. And the folks doing the math from DraftKings to FPI, listen, they're running algorithms, they're running different sequences, and here's what the data says. Here's what the computer spits out with different scenarios. They're running results, they're running different programs. I'm not shockingly enough, I'm not a theorem or theory guy. I'm awful with equations. Okay, you can just put money down and say, yeah, that isn't my cup of tea. But I can understand how the numbers come out. And right now, DraftKings, with their over-under on wins, is right at 6. And there's about 3 coin flip games. There's more than that, but from a percentages standpoint for ESPN FPI, there's some big-time coin flip games where the win probability is right at 50% or just a shade higher. Those are the ones that can go either way. But DraftKings goes down the list. They say Ohio State, Michigan each at 10.5 for the regular season. Penn State right at 9.5. Wisconsin, the best out of the West at 9. And you have Iowa at 7.5. They have Maryland coming in at 7. Illinois right at 6.5, along with the Gophers at 6.5. Nebraska just right below there at 6 wins, which gets you to a bowl. Sparty's at 5.5. Purdue's at 5.5. Indiana and Northwestern pulling up the rear here at 3.5 wins. So do they get to 4 if you're Indiana or Northwestern? Nebraska's very a hard line 6. And when we talk perception here, Elijah, that legend, that fear factor, that reputation of Nebraska football has been dwindling. And it's been dwindling not just by the fact that teams have had successful fourth quarters or blown out Nebraska or won close games in Lincoln or when Nebraska's visited. It's been a situation of pretty hard evidence. When you have a long, hard look at Nebraska, it went south with a third coaching change ago. And the percentages say this: Nebraska's got a 27% chance to win in Minnesota. Mm-hmm. They're at a 71% chance to beat Colorado. Northern Illinois and Louisiana Tech, mid 85, 86% win probability. You're at 12% against Michigan. You're down to 32% against Illinois. You're right around 70% win percentage or win probability against Northwestern.
But that drops to 40% if you kick an onside kick.
I didn't dive into that. But your coin flip games, Purdue and Maryland, that will make or break you based on what FPI is seeing with the win percentage. The win percentage against Purdue at 51%. That's a home game in Lincoln. You're at 24% against Michigan State on the road. You're right at 51% against Maryland. Wisconsin, you're right at around 19% win probability, so a 1 in 5 chance. And your low 40s as you wrap up the regular season at home against Iowa at 43%.
43% I'd still consider pretty much a coin flip, though.
Because it's a home game for you. But Nebraska's strength of schedule is right above 60 at 61st. You've got a 2.6% chance to win the West. And you got a 54% chance to win at least 6 games. All that being said, what can you put together offensively, defensively, and special teams? I think the attitude or the mentality when you face Nebraska will have an attitude check. I think under Frost, I think teams said, all right, if we keep it close, they'll screw it up. And I think under Riley, beyond his first team and beyond the end of that 16 season where it really went downhill, they went 2-4 to finish versus starting out 6-0 and ranked 6th.
Well, I think the game plan for the Mike Riley teams was just, even if it's a close game, we'll just keep on running the football and eventually they'll crumble.
Yeah, they'll fold. 2016, 2017, Nebraska's going to fold if you keep punching them. 2018 through the Frost era, if we keep it close, they'll screw it up.
Yeah, they might not fold, but they're sure as hell going to shoot themselves in the foot.
Right. Yeah, it's not a toughness question anymore with Nebraska football. It's a competency question with Nebraska. So I think teams will be a little bit more cautious, and I think the word will be out. Matt Rule's a details guy, clearly, so this team will be more buttoned up. And from a confidence standpoint, I don't know that you're going to be as confident. You're going to get your guys ready to come play, host, or go on the road against Nebraska. But, yeah, the word's been out on Nebraska that they've been a bleep show for a long time around the coaching circles. I think that changes based on who's in charge right now. Now, Nebraska has underachieved. Nebraska's had 7-win or better talent much of these last 6 seasons. they've not hit that. They've been at 5 a couple of times. They've tapped out at 4. They've gotten a couple of 3 and 9s, more so the 4 and 8s. But they've had a couple of instances to try and get to 6, and it didn't work. So their best teams was that 2018 season where I think they still ended up going 4 and 8, if memory serves, and even the 5 and 7 2019 team blew some ball games. So it's been a mess for Nebraska, but that's really I think that reputation changes because of Matt Rule being in charge and his track record for having tough, disciplined football teams that don't beat themselves.
And just think about how much different that win total would be, what we're thinking, if Nebraska starts off the year 2-0. It's a long way off to say, man, could Nebraska do it? According to the FPI, I think you said it's at 28% that Nebraska would beat Minnesota.
27%.
Ooh, that was pretty close. But with that, that's a shot in the dark, if we're being honest, because nobody knows what Matt Rule's team is going to look like. You can look at returning production and you can say, okay.
Returning production, you should be, until Casey bounced, you were one of few teams that had a near 1,000-yard rusher and a 2,500-yard passer coming back. You don't have that.
But then I look at the percentage when you're at Wisconsin, which is somehow lower than it is against Minnesota. You don't know how good Wisconsin's going to be this year in year 1 under Fickle. They're making a major scheme shift.
No, but there's faith in Fickle.
But there's faith in Fickle, sure. But again, that's another shot in the dark. So I just want to mention the fact that these percentages will change wildly if Nebraska goes and starts the year 1-0 or 2-0 against Minnesota and Colorado. Because you look at that, if you can go 2-0 in those first 2 games, I wouldn't say it's almost guaranteed, but it is almost guaranteed that you can go 4-0 because I think Minnesota and Colorado are better football teams than Northern Illinois and Louisiana Tech. Maybe I'm wrong there. Maybe a Georgia Southern type situation springs up. I gotta
see how just brutal Colorado's roster is.
Yeah.
Okay.
But I look at that. You're 4-0. Do you really think Nebraska's going to go 2-6 to finish the season in Big Ten play if you start the year 4-0?
The way they could.
But I don't see it happening.
They could, and I just think it's because of the schedule. And I know it's not Michigan, Ohio State, Penn State consecutively, but Nebraska's had problems with Wisconsin and Iowa. I think Maryland's going to be pretty good, explosive offensively. Michigan State's no fun. Whether they're a 5-7 or 6-6 or 7-5 team, you still got to go there. Purdue's had your number at Memorial Stadium. They've won 3 straight times in Lincoln. Northwestern, their only win in 2 years has been in Lincoln or been against Nebraska, and you haven't exactly out-muscled Illinois the last 3 years. You're 1-2 against them. Michigan's Michigan. So, yeah, every game is losable after Louisiana Tech, and only a handful of them are winnable, as I look at it right now.
Well, welcome to the meat grinder that is the Big Ten. That's what every year is going to be like, unless you are a team like Michigan or Ohio State.
You're going to stub your toe from time to time, but let's look at how inept Iowa was offensively last year. They still almost had a clean sweep of the West. They beat Purdue, they beat Wisconsin, they won at Minnesota, they won at Illinois 9-6. The throwback, let's set football back 200 years. And their problem was, their crossover was Michigan and Ohio State, and then they lost to Nebraska, and they lost to Iowa State early in the year.
Well, that's pretty much the closest thing we've seen in college football to the 2009 Huskers, except the offense of Iowa last year was probably a little bit worse.
Yeah, there's no Roy to hand off to, no Halou.
It's an interesting comparison to think about.
No, it is. So I look at this hard look at Nebraska, and 6 is doable. I don't know if it comes together. Now, the thing that we can't account for, but I think it's okay to feel like it could happen, I think you could see Nebraska get better as the year goes on. That's what you expect. That's what you hope. That's what you want. But that's not been the case for the last 2 coaching cycles here. The team's not gotten better as the year's gone on.
And that's kind of what I was... Yeah, it did. I think that the team did get better as the year went on because...
Well, last year's its own special thing, but I'm talking for the most part.
I'd even say in years prior, though, because you had that home win against Michigan State that you thought was probably never going to happen based on how the year started.
But you had 18 in last year in a 8-year span, though, of 2 years out of 2 coaching staffs. The you can say that for, but it's not been a consistent thing.
But I would argue that the team getting better hasn't been leaps and bounds, not what you'd expect from a team, especially based on how they start the year. But Nebraska would always start the year looking ugly, making stupid mistakes, and they'd finish the year. November would roll around, and oh, hey, you're giving Wisconsin a test, and oh, hey, you're giving Iowa a test. That team definitely looked better. I'm not saying it always translated to the win column, but I think the team did get better, and that's kind of what the point I was making earlier about if Nebraska starts this year 2-0, I don't see Nebraska going 2-6 because of what you just laid out. Under a first-year head coach, you're expecting this team to get better as the year goes on. I think you can say the same for a team on Nebraska's schedule in Wisconsin.
I just still don't know how November is going to go. That is your definer in the Big Ten. Mm-hmm. How do you survive it? How do you muscle forward with a 3-1 record in November, or at worst a 2-2 after you've built up a little equity because you have some earlier or mid-season wins in the month of October? But interesting discussion point.
I think you need to be at 5 wins going into November if you want to make a bowl game.
Oh, yes, absolutely, totally agree with that. And you can get to 5 if you handle your business in September. We'll get Coach McBride's take on this. How do you think teams view Nebraska, the program, and also the win totals? Coach will weigh in on that. Mark Waller going to be with us as it's the junior recruiting fair out at Firethorn later on tonight.
And now, back to Hail Varsity Radio.
Thanks for spending time. It's Hail Varsity Radio. We're presented by Currency, Schmidt and Elijah Herbel. And let's talk recruiting fair that's going on, a junior day recruiting fair with the great folks that have put it together, the Lincoln Football Coaches Association. President Mark Waller, longtime head coach at North Star and out at Holdridge, and assistant at Elkhorn South. Coach, thanks for a few minutes. How we doing?
Great, Chris. How about you?
We're good. We're glad the sun's shining, and it's a great time of year. And let's touch on this junior recruiting fair, Coach Waller. And, man, this has been going on a while. About every May we get a chance to say hi to you and tell folks about what's going on out at Firethorn and give folks a little backstory to this recruiting fair and what the goal is.
Yeah, our first event was, I believe, back in 2015, and we're expecting a great turnout tonight, Chris. We're fortunate with the great weather, and the people out at Firethorn Resort take care of us. We get to utilize their patio area tonight, and, we're looking forward to it. We have about 25 schools, Division I AA, Division II, Division III schools that have pre-registered, and then we'll have, Chris, probably about 5 to 10 university or colleges walk up, and we'll have a great turnout of high school coaches in the area, the Lincoln coaches surrounding high schools. So it's a great event. It's a great event for the college coaches. They get, see a lot of high school programs, get a lot of data on student athletes in this area in about 2 hours instead of traveling around 3 or 4 days to different high schools. But they really appreciate it. They sure like it.
Well, it is a wonderful service. Mark Waller with us here, Hail Varsity Radio, the Lincoln Football Coaches Association, the Junior Day Recruiting Fair. And, Coach, touch on just some of the programs and area schools that are going to be represented tonight out at Firethorn with head coaches or assistants there.
Yeah, I believe every high school or in Lincoln, all the Class A schools I know will be there in attendance. Most of the HAC schools. We have some surrounding high schools like Malcolm, Seward, Waverly. We actually have some schools from the Metro coming in tonight. I know Millard West is going to be there. Scott, Omaha Scott, Coach Turman. I believe they have a conflict with a district track meet tomorrow, so they're going to come to ours tonight. But I believe we have 25 different high schools represented in the recruiting booklet that each college coach and university will get tonight. So it's going to be a good turnout. We're excited.
Coach Mark Waller's with us here at Hail Varsity Radio. And, Coach, whenever you're talking about recruiting, I know we have parents out there, maybe even some athletes out there who are hoping to go off and play college sports somewhere. And what is it that a college team, especially the ones that are going to be coming tonight, are looking for in their athletes that are juniors and younger in terms of guys that are going to develop and be guys that can go off and play college sports? What are they looking for?
Well, the first thing they look for is just their measurables, their height, weight, their speed, their strength, and all that data is included in the recruiting booklet, their GPA, their character, stuff like that. And then naturally, a lot of these coaches that get all this data, they get the names of the student athletes and their school and their program that they're in, and then they'll go back and then they'll watch some film on them. There's always huddle clips on each student athlete. So, but the biggest thing is, they just want to get names, they want to get data information, and then they'll spend a lot of time as a coaching staff at the college just watching film on these potential prospects.
It's a great introduction and meet and greet. The Junior Day Recruiting Fair going on out at Firethorn Resort tonight with the Lincoln Football Coaches Association President Mark Waller with us. Coach, you've seen it for a long time, and you've seen the world of recruiting change. What's your reaction to 2023 and the world of recruiting compared to even, I don't know, maybe 10, 15 years ago?
Yeah, it's a different world with the transfer portal and recruiting. I mean, they're recruiting student athletes now as freshmen and sophomores that are getting offers. When I first got into coaching, you usually got recruited as a senior, but this is 2023, Chris, like you said, and it's really changed. It's almost crazy sometimes how early a young man may get an offer from a school or two, and just all the schools have tremendous facilities now, so the playing field is really leveled out. And then, from a college perspective, once you recruit a young man and get him in your program, then you got to keep recruiting him. You got to keep him in there because of the transfer portal. It's crazy, but it is what it is. This is college football in today's world, and we just got to deal with it.
Tell me a little bit about some of the programs that'll be on hand tonight. You mentioned the high school, the region that's covered between Lincoln, Omaha, and surrounding schools, and other high school programs that are coming in. What are some of the colleges, if you can mention, that will be on hand tonight at this resort?
Yeah, I'm sure Coach Gans, former Nebraska quarterback from Northern, will be in. We've had South Dakota State University in. South Dakota's been here in the past. We have a ton of in-state schools like Doane, Concordia, Hastings College, Midland Lutheran. All of those schools will have Drake University in, a lot of schools out of Kansas, Emporia State, Fort Hays State, a lot of schools out of South Dakota will be in. So, like I said, it's going to be a great turnout. It's a great event. It's a really good deal for the student athletes.
And for future recruiting fairs, how can folks get in touch with you? How can folks kind of get in the loop as far as if they want their son to have a chance? I'm sure the communication's there with their high school coach, but just as far as your website or social media, where can folks go to find out more about Lincoln Football Coaches Association?
Yeah, the biggest thing is the high school football coach. They're going to input data of their student athletes in the booklets, and they can go to the Lincoln Football Coaches Association website that we have. We have a lot of information on there in terms of who we always bring in as coaching staffs to speak at our clinic events in March, April, and May every year. And just the biggest thing, I guess, is just follow our website and follow us on Twitter, Chris.
Coach Mark Waller's with us. Coach, you've had an opportunity to over the years have members of Nebraska's staff come in, and I know that's been pretty awesome when it comes to some of the coaching clinics you put on.
Yeah, we really appreciate Coach Rule and his staff. We've got to know them pretty well. Hopefully they can get things rolling. And, Coach Foley's been doing a great job of getting out in all the high schools in the state of Nebraska and building those relationships. And they're really out hitting the recruiting trail hard. So we're excited about Coach Riley and his staff and see if we can get this thing turned around here in Nebraska.
Well, we were just talking win totals that are put out by the DraftKings have put out, and they got the Big Red at 6 right now, and kind of a jumble with the rest of the conference. So it's already starting, and we're just starting out in May, Coach Waller, with some of the predictions. But Coach Waller, thanks for what you do with the Lincoln Football Coaches Association. And one more time, 6 o'clock tonight out at the Firethorn Resort, Junior Day Recruiting Fair. And Coach, there's so many stories I'm sure you have of kids being able to continue their football career and it really being joyful for them.
Absolutely, yeah. It's it's a great deal for the student athlete. It's good for the high school programs. It's good for the high school coaches to get face to face with these college coaches coming in tonight and build relationships. And it's great for the college coaches just to find out a lot of information about all the great players in the state of Nebraska.
Coach Waller, thanks for your time. Thanks for what you're doing.
Thank you, Chris. Appreciate it. Thanks. Bye.
There he is. Mark Waller with us, longtime head coach at Lincoln North Star, assistant at Elkhorn South, and proud of Holdridge, man. Really great stuff from him over the years at Holdridge. And this is great. This is so much fun for kids. And if you get a Joe Gans sighting, that's always a great thing with some of the programs that are coming in Northern Iowa that Coach Waller mentioned, the Dakotas, South Dakota State, USD, and some of the other Dakota schools on top of the Iowa and other Kansas programs. So, man, it just kids can go play ball and keep playing ball, and maybe another division's the best option for some players.
And I think it's great having a junior day type event like this where coaches can go out and get in front of these coaches and say, hey, I know come 1 year from now, you're going to want to talk to this guy. I know come a year and a half from now, this is going to be a guy that you're going to want on your roster. You're going to want to talk to. You can kick the tires on it now, because even I remember, I wasn't in high school all that long ago, and I remember it was senior year rolls around, and then it's, okay, Midland wants to talk to you. Sioux Falls wants to talk to you. All these schools from the region want to talk to you, and it kind of feels like a whirlwind. So I think it's great for these kids, great for parents, great for everybody to know, you know what, you're going into your junior year of high school. Recruiting's about to start picking up if that's something you're interested in. It's great to get at least these athletes some time to process and some time to think, so it's not, you know what, your senior season just ended, now you got 2 weeks to figure out where you want to go.
Did you consider playing ball beyond?
I did,
Because you did, 2 years at Southeast as a starter?
Yeah. So the main one that I thought about going up and doing was the University of Sioux Falls.
Mm-hmm. Really high level. Well, you know who used to be at Sioux Falls? I think you know who used to be at Sioux Falls?
That was
Keelan DeBoer.
Keelan DeBoer, yeah.
Keelan DeBoer lost 3 games in a decade.
Yeah, that was before my high school time, just a little bit. But
no, I know. But he was at Sioux Falls in 08 and 09.
That was one I really thought about, really liked. And then the guy who was talking to me ended up taking a job at a different university. And he was like, sorry, man, you're not in my recruiting territory anymore. Nothing I can do. And I went, well, it looks like I'm going to go be a
If we can go in the old DeLorean, Elijah said, yeah, I'm going to go to Idaho or Idaho State and just kick it.
Would have been a good time. But hey,
beautiful
look how life turned out for me. My life right now is I get on the radio and I talk about the Huskers.
You have a mustache. You get to umpire on weekends, and you're stuck with me Monday through Saturday, right?
It's not a bad life to live.
You're very kind.
I don't have to get surgeries in 10 years to fix my knees or my shoulders or anything like that.
No kidding. On the recruiting front, kudos to Teddy Rizak. He is a stud ball player, of course, with Westside. Cheer for old Notre Dame. Mm-hmm. That's my Beano Cook impersonation. But the Irish extending an offer to Teddy Rizak. And that is awesome. He is an uber talent. You know how good the West Side program is. That's big time for him. And I think they're circling him as maybe, as he's an athlete at West Side, can crush it on both sides of the football. Rizak being looked at by Notre Dame as an outside linebacker.
And while we're talking recruiting, Nebraska in a recruiting battle with Alabama yet again, as Alabama's offered Idaho athlete Gatlin Bear.
Yeah, Nebraska making the final cut, which is nice, but, St. Nick just offered him.
Once Bama jumps in, everything changes.
Yeah, we'll talk a little more college football next.
And now, back to Hail Varsity Radio.
Back with you, it's Hail Varsity Radio. We're presented by Currency. For all your equipment financing needs, go Currency. You've got a statement from Iowa State and its Department of Intercollegiate Athletics. They're aware of online sports wagering allegations involving approximately 15 of their active student athletes from the sports of football, wrestling, track, and field. And the NCAA rules, the universities notify the NCAA to take appropriate actions and resolve these issues. You've got gambling piping up and popping up with Iowa baseball over the weekend as well. Elijah, that was a bit of a disturbing story, and it's not going away as you see it with the NFL, where 6 players have been suspended by Goodell with them wagering on NFL games, or that's the alleged action anyway.
And I guarantee that every single athlete that you hear this story on, Alabama baseball, Iowa State baseball, every single one of them knows the rules and knows the consequences. Because I can tell you, my time at Husker Vision, they sat us all down every single year and laid out the rules on gambling, on wagering. We can even play, according to the rule book, sorry, Husker Vision, you're learning this now for the first time. I was definitely in a pay-to-play fantasy football league. Even that was against the rules.
Really?
If there was money on the line in a fantasy football league, you couldn't play it. It was potentially an NCAA violation, and that was because of the fact that you may have inside information from somebody who knows somebody from whatever. They didn't want to have it. I mean, I also know a lot of people who broke the rules with fantasy football, with gambling, with wagering, with all that, with even Nebraska not being a legal state for sports gambling at the time.
Everybody's got a buddy that they bet through on their, shouldn't say everybody, but either dorm floor or buddy who knew a buddy that attended bar or in the fraternity house. I mean, it's pretty rampant.
Oh, yeah.
People love it.
People love doing
it.
And
now it's legal, just not on Nebraska or Creighton in state.
And it's not going to be legal for these guys. I mean, the thing is I feel like people sit back and they go, I'm a college baseball athlete. What does it matter if I go bet the NFL? But that's still going to come up as a violation, because for all you know, you could know somebody on the football team who knows somebody on the Green Bay Packers because they played on the football team last year, and they're saying, yeah,
hey, I'm talking to so-and-so on the practice squad, and before he got traded, Aaron's big toe is hurting him.
Yep.
And that's the inside info where you take the under and you take the 3.5 for the other team.
Yep, and now you have a gambling violation on your hands. So while these stories come out, some of them could be minor like that. Some of it could be major. We could have point shaving and there's all the scandals of the type like that. We don't know what the information is going to have, but like these guys know what the rules are. There's minor violations. There's major violations. We'll wait for this investigation to complete its course, and we'll see what the penalties are, if there are any penalties. But I just want to lay that out there. It's not like these guys didn't know the rules. I guarantee if they're sitting down the Husker Vision student employees every single year to have a meeting with compliance to say, hey, you guys can't do this, I guarantee this is ad nauseum being preached to the athletes. Stay away from the sports books. Stay away from the apps. We know it's legal here. Don't even bother with it. You're just going to put yourself in a world of trouble. So
you don't have online ability. You don't have apps. If you're going to go put a sports wager down, you're going to have to go to the window on Highway 77 in Lincoln, or you're going to have to go hit the different windows around the states that have the sports gaming. The app part, while I think needs to be in place, or a kiosk will be likely if you go have a beer and a burger somewhere. There are rules and restrictions that's kind of price of doing business, no pun intended, if you're a student athlete. Speaking of rules, Phoenix, Denver. So let's get the thoughts here from Joker here on the incident. The incident that garnered a technical foul. He went into the stands. He grabbed the basketball from the Suns owner, Ashiba, and I mean, all hell broke loose. Just find these guys, find the owner. Mark Cuban did this when he was a new owner and got fined. Jokic is intense, probably a little ticked off. It was just him on offense last night. So just find him and move on. I don't need suspensions, but Jokic laid out last night in the crowd and his view and take on things.
He told me I was elbowing the fan. So, but the fan put a hand on me first, so I thought the league's supposed to protect us or whatever. So, but maybe I'm wrong. So we will see.
Did you happen to know who the fan was?
He's a fan of. He's on the. I know who is, but he's a fan, isn't he? If he's a senior.
Phoenix Suns owner?
Sitting on the courts, and he's a fan, isn't he?
Yep.
That doesn't mean that he's so whoever it is, and he's a fan. He cannot influence the game by holding the ball.
So, Jokic, that's his take on things.
Well, and being a Nuggets fan, this has been something that Jokic has done for a long time. With his passing ability, you always see the highlights of the one-handed outlet passes.
Sure, he wants to get down court and get in transition.
Yeah, and he sees a guy in Josh Okogie who has fallen into the crowd a little bit, and he says, okay, I have a 5-on-4. Somebody's going to be open on this inbounds pass. Let's see if we can get an easy 2 points. The Suns owner knew exactly what he was doing, holding on to the basketball. I guarantee he knows the scouting report on Jokic. He's trying to hold the ball. He's trying to get himself involved. It's wrongdoing on both sides. A, the Suns owner shouldn't hold the ball. B, Jokic, whenever...
Don't go into the crowd, bro.
Whenever you realize that this guy's not going to give up the ball easily, you take 6 steps back and get out of there, wait for somebody else to handle it. You don't even put yourself in that situation. But there's wrongdoing on both sides here. As you laid out, I think a fine for both sides makes the most sense. Fine the Suns owner probably a little bit more than Jokic based on the fact that he's a team owner.
Yeah, you're an owner,
He
dude.
should know better.
You need to... If you can't control your emotions, go park yourself in a suite and make yourself further away from the action.
And it's a case like you remember growing up, like, oh, the Suns owner started it. Jokic shouldn't have been involved. He has wrongdoing for getting in there and giving, it was a minor elbow, but like trying to get this guy off.
The guy acted like he was on the pitch and he got sniped.
Well, he played for Tom Izzo. He knows how to flop.
Wow. How about Michael Malone, the coach for Denver? Weighs in, and he wasn't happy with how things went down. He's not happy that things are 2-2.
I'm still not really sure what happened. I haven't seen a video of it. I think it's crazy that Nikola got technical foul in that situation. He's going to get the ball, and some fan is holding on to the ball like he wants to be a part of the game. Just give the ball up, man. You know what I mean? And, you know, they deemed Nikola doing something that was excessive, I guess, and they gave him the tech, but I still don't really understand it.
Do you think the fans, the owner of the Suns, made any difference?
I don't give a I mean, I really don't care.
So Woj dropping this nugget.
Nugget.
About 30 minutes ago. So you've got Jokic will not be suspended. Jokic will be fined $25,000 for the slight push of Ashiba while he was trying to retrieve the ball. You got the technical foul. You had Ashiba took to Twitter this morning. Great win for the Suns last night in an amazing series. That should be the only story. Suspending or fining anyone over last night. That includes me as the owner. Suspending anyone for last night's incident would not be right. I have a lot of respect for Jokic. Don't want to see anything like that. Excited for Game 5. Go Suns.
I think you slap Jokic with a $25,000 fine. I'm fine with that. And then you probably go 50 for the owner.
I'd go 6 figures.
You go 6 figures?
Yep.
Okay.
Yeah, because you're supposed to be above that.
I mean, I guarantee you make more than that for one playoff game anyway.
Well, it's probably $13 beers.
And now, back to Hail Varsity Radio.
Well, the recruiting story of the weekend was Bronny James. We'll get thoughts and a take or two on him going to USC next hour. Numbers to get in, 489-1240. 489-1240. We focused on DraftKings and their win total with Nebraska and much of the Big Ten. What is Nebraska's reputation out there if you're a team coming into Memorial Stadium or you're hosting Nebraska? Has that rep changed because you've got a new sheriff in town in Coach Rule? His reputation and, history are vastly different than the two previous regimes. And there was a tag associated when you talk to former coaches about Nebraska under the Riley years and unfortunately under some of the Frost years about they'll either screw it up or they'll fold. That is not going to be the paragraph on Nebraska football moving forward if Coach Rule has anything to say about it. Quick reminder about buckling up. Use your seatbelt. It saves lives. It prevents injuries only if properly worn. Buckle up. A message from the Nebraska Department of Highway Safety Office. So, good weekend of sports. Did you know anybody who cashed in on the Derby? Who had a winner? Who had a win play show? Who had an exacto I picked Hit Show. We did our Derby preview from Iowa Russ's Derby Pate, which was a lot of fun. And just for about 3 seconds of the entire race, Hit Show looked like it was going to surge ahead, and then it faded back to fifth.
Well, I do know a group of people who definitely didn't pick the winner. That was the Iowa and Iowa State athletic programs. None of them got it right, based on what I've been hearing. That was a joke based on that segment.
That was good.
Yeah. No, I didn't have it. I did, though, have Muse in our predictions that we put up on Saturday before the Derby.
Mm-hmm.
I had Muse finishing second, so I don't think that's a winner, but I think that's about as close as you can get.
Mm-hmm.
All right?
Yeah, and verifying, I mean, that thing shot out of the gate and then just absolutely faded. And the cloud over the Derby is 7 ponies that passed away. Brennan asks a gambling question. This goes back to Jamison Williams getting 6 games versus Calvin Ridley getting 6 plus 10, getting the whole year of suspension, the Atlanta wide receiver, both guys from Bama. And Brennan's like, what's your take on the suspension time? Well, you got to go hard after the first offender. The NFL did that with Calvin Ridley getting a full year. Now, if you're Jamison Williams and the other 5 guys in the NFL who dabbled on betting and you're getting 6 games, you can be relieved because, well, look what I gave the first guy a year. It could have been a harsher penalty because you're the next guy to screw up after the precedent's been set. But the fact that there was multiple guys and more states are allowing legal gambling, even though the NFL is very clear on their policy, 6 games, I think, is the number because of the number of offenders.
Well, yeah, and especially now that you're like, well, the NFL has official sportsbook partners. This is where you go bet on the NFL.
You're going to have betting kiosks inside the stadium.
Exactly.
You're going to partner with the books if you're the NFL.
I understand pulling the suspension back, but maybe even look at rewriting the rules. Who knows?
Could.
It's just the times are changing.
Charlie McBride, next hour, a Blackshirt Hour with Hail Varsity.
The voice of Husker Nation is on the air. This is Hail Varsity Radio. Insight, opinion, expertise, along with the biggest names talking Nebraska sports. Join in with the show at 402-489-1240 or 1-800-825-5865. Now, here are your hosts, Chris Schmidt and Elijah Herbel.
Thanks for hanging out. It's Hour 2. It's Hail Varsity Radio. We're presented by Currency. For all your equipment financing needs, go Currency. The Blackshirt Hour gets kicked off here with Mr. Blackshirt, Charlie McBride, a Monday with Charlie, Chris Schmidt, Elijah Herbel. Coach, how we doing? How was the weekend?
No, it's great. Well, it was one of those weekends where it was warm and wet. Sort of, on and off and a little windy, but it's pretty nice this time of year. Anything that's warmer than 10 degrees is pretty good.
You're a happy guy, right? With that wind coming off the lake. I like it. Did you watch?
The fishermen are starting to come out.
Good.
And the guys are, don't have licenses yet, are fishing off their docks.
Okay. Are you going to go wet a line here? Are you going to get out and fish pretty soon?
Well, I get a license right away at the beginning of the year. It makes the states feel better when they get my money.
Well, did you do any Kentucky Derby work? Did you look at any of the horses?
That's out of my hands. I used to, a long time ago. I used to watch it, and that was as far as it got. And any kind of gambling on the horses I did was on Big Red Day. When we, went out to, Grand Island for that, and that ended up always having my $20, and my wife and I'd sit there and look at each other and be done in a couple races.
So don't go with my pick, is what you're saying. That was pretty funny. Charlie McBride's with us. Coach, I want to get your reaction to Neil Smith and Keelan Smith, Neil's son. gave his verbal commitment Friday to play for Nebraska. He's a really good-looking athlete that we look at as maybe kind of that hybrid tight end spot. But we talked to Neil on Friday, and he's super excited. What do you think about another Husker legacy? This time it's Neil Smith's son.
That'd be super. I mean, that kind of stuff fires me up. I know I'm watching Garrett Talmadge's kids grow up, and I'll tell you what, they're going to be loaded. I mean, I think, as they get older, they're getting wider and taller. Mm-hmm. But I think, Neil was an interesting guy because Jack Pierce was recruiting down there, and he came in. He said, I want you to look at this defensive end. So I started looking at him, he got hurt. Mm-hmm. And so all of a sudden their tackle moved to defensive end, and that was Neil. And I saw him, and I saw about 5 plays. I said, Jack, I don't know who he is, but bring him in for a visit. And, it's kind of funny because he only weighed about 16 to 18 pounds. I think we weighed him here. And, I look at his son, it's about 6'3". Neil's split high. He's about 6'3.5", I think. I don't think he's as tall as a lot of people think he is. Of course, when you stand next to him, all of a sudden he looks like he just grew another foot. But but if he's anything like his dad, which I assume he probably is, he's got good length and he's got good speed. And Neil was in the 4.5, 4.44 range, running in the 40.
That's crazy.
And which was, I mean, so, you don't know. And where he fits in, I don't know because I don't know the defense and, exactly how they're going to do it. But sometimes a guy like that, like Neil was, probably could even be a linebacker. And play off the line of scrimmage and things like that. So I got a kid that like that, and is he a junior or is he a 20? Is he
he's a 2024, so he's got a senior year yet to play.
He's got this year, right?
Yep. Yes.
Okay. Well, that. He's the kind of kid you're looking for. I think that's what they build. That's what we build our program on. Tom used to say, there wasn't stars, but there was some kind of a rating, and things like that. He could care less what they are. If the kids look like they can play, they can play. And if they would fit into what we're doing, and I assume that they've looked at him and he can fit in someplace because of his athletic ability.
Charlie, if you take me back to that first time watching Neil, what made you think that this guy had a chance to be a potential high-level defensive lineman? We were talking last week about Keelan. He's coming in as a tight end. I think maybe you give him a look as defensive end or outside linebacker based on the bloodlines and who his dad is. But what stood out to you about Neil that made you go, you know what, this guy's a defensive end and he can be a high-level defensive end as opposed to putting him anywhere else in the field?
Well, I think right off the bat, you look at toughness and speed. And he had speed and change of direction, really, really well. And balance was, his balance. You never saw him off his feet. You saw him, if anything got outside of him, he could catch it. And here he was, he was playing tackle at the time.
Jeez.
And I mean, I always like to say that coach is really smart. Playing a guy that can run like that at tackle. But he was, at that time, he was, inside guy. And the guy we were looking at, of course, was the defensive end. And I didn't even ask Jack about the guy after that because he got hurt in the game. And Neil was up in a plane the next week coming up to Lincoln.
Well, that was cool, and Neil was going to go be a Marine, except Nebraska had one more scholarship spot for him, and another really good kid out of New Orleans that you guys were able to get up to Lincoln. And Neil smiles every time we talk to Neil. He still has that smile in his voice about what Nebraska did for him, and obviously he was a really great player for Nebraska, but his pro career was just incredible. I'm hoping he gets in the Hall of Fame soon.
Well, he had a little when he got drafted. I think that Kansas City thought he was a bust because he had some a tendon and a muscle, I think it was, that were torn, and it really didn't heal well enough so that he played. But the next year he started really cranking, and it made a big difference, to his future. And of course, he was one of those guys that you could always depend on him. I mean, he never made mistakes, and he was just a hard-nosed kid that, liked to play. I mean, he loved the game, and and that was probably the best thing. And he just was one of those. He's almost too good an athlete to coach, because I don't know if I was worried about it, and I coach a guy this good or not, and it's just a matter of, teach him, have him find out where he fits as far as the pass rush goes. You can show the kids everything you got, and they have to pick out what's the best thing for them, where they feel good mentally and so forth, and then just keep working on it. And he was one of those guys.
Charlie McBride's with us on Monday with Charlie at Hail Varsity Radio. Coach, DraftKings has come out with win predictions. The over-under for Nebraska football for 2023 already is 6 wins when they look at the schedule. They've got percentages out, percentage of likely victory for Nebraska. What's the win probability? And there's quite a few coin flip games. What do you think when you hear 6 in year one for this Nebraska team?
Well, it's all starting right now. I mean, it actually started in the winter program, and I say it every year that kids, how they just mesh together is a big thing, because you can have. You can look at Florida and us. Who has the best athletes? That's a joke. Florida, has the better athletes and everything, and they're all going to say we're a pain in the, we can't run, and we can't play on grass, and we can't do this. And it's always we can't. And we got our players who are a bunch of rockheads. They don't like that kind of stuff. So you can play it that way and then get, the snot knocked out of you. That's what they did. And, those things are tough. I mean, it's just hard for me to figure out sometimes what's really the best of the whole thing,
No, I get it. I mean, right now that's an early prediction, but what do you think Nebraska's reputation has been? Has it been, has the program been feared, or has it been more vulnerable? I think the reputation changes.
They don't really know exactly, but their coaches do. And they get a lot of information from their coaches, and their coaches there's not many coaches in this country, whether they played against us and don't like us, they still have a lot of respect for us. Nebraska. And Nebraska has always been, a good, solid program. And I think that anytime you don't win like we did, that doesn't help you. But it still has, some juice in it. And the thing I think is I think a lot of the coaches, I talked to guys that even remember when we went for 2 and didn't make it, that kind of a thing.
Yeah.
And stuff like that. And so I think our program's strong. I really do. And I think in recruiting, there's a lot of kids will be asking their coaches about what, Nebraska's all about.
Coach, from your time, did you go into a season circling opponents as, this is a must-win game, this one should be easy, maybe we don't need to focus on as much, or do you take it on a game-by-game basis as the year goes on, not looking ahead?
I hated that. I mean, somebody said to me one day, "Well, what's the game you have to win next year?" I said, "The first one." That makes the first game is the most important game of all of them. I mean, and because the thing is that makes a big difference in the mental outlook of your players. Mm-hmm. And, with a new program and everything, it's got to be, it's tough on the coaches because, they don't know what's going to happen. Mm-hmm. And the other side of the ball, they don't know exactly what you're doing. And but the first game is really, really important. And when you go into a conference game, and I thought the Big Ten was a little smarter than this, but you usually don't start with a conference game right off the bat, which we've done, and it hadn't worked out for us. But I never thought that was a good idea. They sure don't do it in pro ball or anything else, really. So that's to me the first game's really important to us, and I think that our reputation is good.
Well, and I think it may tick up a little bit just because Coach Rule's got a pretty impressive reputation from his time in college. Is that fair?
Yeah, you got that right.
Coach, what's on the docket for you this weekend? Are you going to be fishing, relaxing? You got yard work? What's on the?
I'll be. Well, now I'm got most everything done. I have to. Now I start working, which isn't one of my things. Is getting the planting ready for our flowers. How's that look?
Well,
that's making me sick.
What kind of flowers you got, though? I'm sure it looks beautiful.
I don't know. That's the problem. All I got to do is get it all prepared to put it in, and then I let her turn loose. I turn her loose, and I find out later. But I tell you, we got to be careful here because we get in the wind, and the wind can really tear up a lot of stuff that isn't pretty strong.
Well, a wise man once said, "Happy wife, happy life."
Yes, absolutely. You plant them flowers. It's okay.
Yeah, I'm good at it, too.
I find a couple dogs that eat all the flowers.
I have a green toe.
A green toe instead of a green thumb. I love it. Coach, you have a good week, and thanks for talking some football with us today.
Okay, guys, have fun this week.
You too.
Okay? Okay, bye.
There he is, Mr. Blackshirt. Charlie McBride is green. What do you say, toe?
Green toe.
He's. We need him to send us a picture of his flower bed once it's all planted and pretty. And it'd be cool to see if he's doing some roses, a rose bush or something.
I need some tips because my flower beds at home are looking rough. They look good for like the first year, and then after that it was just like some other plants started creeping in, and now they're just like kind of wild.
Well, you heard Coach McBride mention Jack Pierce, the late great Jack. Jack had the best yard in Lincoln. Mike Babcock has taken that over, which is really cool, and we have the worst backyard in Lincoln. Jay Moore, Blackshirt Hour continues next on Hail Varsity.
All-State, 2-year starter, and rush in for the Big Red and NFL vet.
Is Dudeness or Duder or, El Duderino if you're not into the whole brevity thing.
It's Blackshirt Jay Moore with Hail Varsity Radio.
Back into it at Hail Varsity Radio. We're presented by Currency. Time for Blackshirt Husker NFLer Jay Moore joins us, our Blackshirt Hour. Jay Bird, how was the weekend? Did you bet on any ponies?
No, I did not. I was tied up this weekend. Was up at Tatanka Golf Club in the Niobrara, Nebraska area. We had the Nebraska State 4-ball event, kind of the first event of the year to get kind of the year kicked off. So was up there. Didn't get to see much of the races. So no money was placed on ponies. But I did pay attention to a little bit to the ending just to see who won. But other than that, yeah, it was just golf this weekend, which was good. The weather was fantastic.
It was good. Off the top of your head, if Jay Moore is drafting the 5 courses to play in the state of Nebraska, where are you going?
Well, public or private?
Just either way. Your call.
Either way. Oh my gosh. Well, I would say I'd have to put Sandhills in there out in Mullen. I have to put Wild Horse in Gothenburg.
I love that
public
place.
one. That's a great golf course. I'll have to put Arbor Links down in Nebraska City. It's one of my favorites. Omaha Country Club, can't beat it up in Omaha. It's a great one. Obviously, having U.S. Senior Opens. Oh, geez. And I have a bias to Firethorn here in Lincoln. I've been fortunate enough to be a member out there for 10 years, so that's a good of test of golf that you'll ever get.
Believe it's called the Firethorn ass kicking.
It can.
Dubbed by some members.
Yeah, I don't know. It's a Pete Dye course, so I don't know what Pete Dye's wife was doing to him when he was designing all these courses, but he was pissed.
He took it out on all of us. That's pretty good. Jay Moore's with us, Hail Varsity Radio. Jay, a lot to get into with some football, and wanted to get your take here on Keelan Smith. We talked to Neil on Friday, and you've got that Husker legacy. You've got a guy that really is athletic, can do some things at tight end. And if he ends up finding his way to the defensive side of the ball, that's impressive as well. But is Neil one of those Huskers that you remember kind of watching growing up, or at least in the NFL, that really made an impression on you? Guys that you saw or know played at Nebraska that went on to have really good pro careers?
Yeah, Neil was at Nebraska was just a little bit before my time. I remember when about early 90s was about the time I remember the most of Nebraska football, 91, 92, the
way back era.
John Perella, Calvin Jones, Derek Brown. That's kind of the time frame I remember. But I definitely remember Neil more from his NFL playing days, obviously with the Chiefs and the Broncos. And then, my brother's a big Broncos guy. So I remember one time, I don't know how, we were at some event and Neil was there. My brother shook Neil Smith's hand, and he swore to God he wasn't going to wash his hand for the rest of his life. I think he took a shower with a bread bag over it for the first week or something like that.
That's funny.
So, but no, yeah, definitely. Neil was remembering more from the NFL, but I tell you what, just getting legacy guys again, that's great. Obviously, I would think his son understands this place very, very, very well, and things have obviously changed a lot since Neil was here. But just with the communication with Rule and his staff, I think he has a good understanding and a trust of what he's trying to get it back to. So that's a positive sign.
Jay, whenever we were talking to Neil Smith on Friday, we were talking to him about the fact that his son currently plays tight end, and you being such a great defensive lineman, how does that make you feel? And he said he thinks Keelan could be a defensive lineman, but once you're catching touchdowns for the offense, it's hard to move to that defensive side of the ball. Tell me about that mentality that's needed to go and be a defensive lineman, especially in a conference like the Big Ten.
Yeah, that's it's two very important positions, tight end or defensive end, and if you can catch. I had the opportunity to play tight end at Nebraska, but I also came in with a really good player named Matt Harrion. So I kind of weighed my options, and obviously there was a little bit more history with the defensive end position at Nebraska than tight ends. We just named Neil Smith and Grant Wistrom and Jared Tomich and Vandenbach. You just go down the list of guys who played were really, really good. But I like the fact that it shows me that he's an athlete, right? That shows me that's what's important. You want athletic guys who have the chance to play both ways or have that option to do that. Some guys don't have the hands to be able to say, to play tight end or maybe even, switch over to defensive end. So I love that, but it's the mentality is vastly different. Being a defensive lineman, you got to have a little nastiness in you. You have to go some deep, dark places sometimes and to make things happen. Tight end, probably a little softer, and that the mentality. They, you got to block every now and then, but they definitely want to be out there catching the ball. And I imagine they want to be split out wide too and catching the ball too, which is all good because if you have a good tight end, you just look at the NFL, the Travis Kelce's and the Gronkowski's, and you have all those great tight ends that are playing in the NFL. They're a difference maker. So those guys are very important too.
Jay Moore with us, few minutes to tail Varsity Radio at JMoore44. Jay, did you think of Nebraska as a place that will get me to the NFL, or was it something that was not really on the radar? You were able to compartmentalize and just do what was in front of you at the time. I ask that because there's a push to get back to being a bit of an NFL factory for Nebraska, and you're one of many guys with your class that went to the league, and you can count on the many hands, the Neil Smiths, the Broderick Thomases. I mean, you've had first round, second round runs for it feels like decades, and then that faucet's been shut off, and it's on Coach Rule's mind, I'm sure.
Yeah, going to the NFL was never on the radar. It was, my goal since it was a childhood dream to play football in Nebraska. So just to get there was fantastic for me. But then it's just the process, right? Just trying to get better every day. I was nowhere near ready for the NFL through my first 3 years, but I made a nice jump from my sophomore year to my junior year and had a really good junior year, and all of a sudden it became a reality. So then you start playing that game and going through that process of getting, the agents and where you're going to train and all that stuff, combine, Senior Bowl, all that stuff when that's presented to you. But it never was a major goal of mine. I just try to get better every day to see where it got me. But this team's going to get, if they get better and more wins, they're going to get more guys drafted. Yeah, it's rare. There's a reason why Georgia and Alabama and Clemson and Ohio State lead the draft and how many people they get drafted here because they're the best. And teams want to be drafting guys who are on successful programs. That means competition is really, really well. And in winning, winning is a skill, and it takes to know that, to compete and learn that process. Nebraska gets back to winning 7-8 games, which I don't think is very, very attainable in the next couple of years with Rule. You're going to start seeing more, second, third, fourth round draft picks. Maybe you squeeze a first rounder in there, which would be fantastic. Haven't had one of those in a while. So it's just getting back to the basics, just winning. It's really not that complicated. You win more football games, you're going to get more guys drafted. You win more football games, more scouts want to watch your film and see what's happening. Well, Nebraska just beat Michigan. They must have some guys on there now, so they'll watch. Nebraska just beat Michigan State, Minnesota, game 1. They must have some guys. So let's check out their film, and then they see that, and then they're coming to practice more often on Tuesdays and watching that. And they're talking back to the GMs and saying, hey, this guy's got to be on our list as a draftable prospect. So it's pretty simple. Just win more football games, you'll get more guys drafted.
Jay, do you think that the number of guys that you get drafted in any given year is a fair barometer for the success of a college football program? That's kind of become the standard among recent years. As you look at, how many games do they win a year, but then more importantly, how many draft picks they send to the NFL? That's how you get more talent into your program by being able to show your high school recruits, we sent this guy and this guy and this guy into the NFL. Do you think that's a fair barometer for success?
I think it is. I can't think. It's rare that it's hard to think of successful football programs that aren't sending 5-6 guys to the draft every year, or that are drafted. I can't. Maybe Minnesota here recently. I don't think Ibrahim was drafted. He was a really good running back. They've had some decent success, nothing crazy, but it's hard to think of a program that wins 9, 10, 11, 12 games that, are only getting 5th and 6th round draft picks, drafted, or, a bunch of undrafted free agents. So I think it's a very fair barometer that you win football games, you're playing for conference championships, you're playing in, New Year's Day bowl games, you're probably going to have a handful of guys get drafted to the NFL. So I think that's more unfair to have that assessment.
Jay Moore's with us. A couple more minutes at Tail Varsity Radio at JMoore44 on Twitter is where you can follow him. You watch him with Big Red Ramp Up during the season and around recruiting time. Our old buddy Tom Chattel is going to have a 100th anniversary celebration type column, and that brings back memories for me just growing up, going to the stadium with my dad, and also being lucky enough to cover it for a while. I'm grayer.
Sure.
Jay, I'm interested. What was your first memory as a kid at Memorial Stadium? Is there a team or a game?
Yeah, honestly, it always pops up. I want to say it was 91 Oklahoma game. It was cold and rainy the whole game. That was Calvin Jones. That would have been that era, the Derek Brown. I think was Cale Gundy the quarterback at Oklahoma. Maybe
he was. And
yeah.
Nebraska won on Calvin Jones's kind of walk-off, didn't they?
Mm-hmm. Yeah. So I remember that was the first time going to a game. 91? I would have been 8.
Youngin.
dragging my dad to the game, and way too early. It's raining. I remember walking to the game, and we're getting poured on, and we're under some awnings on campus and stuff. And we'd go, and he's like, "You sure you want to go in this early?" And I go, "Yeah, absolutely." I think we had to leave at halftime because we were both just soaking wet, freezing. I think I had an older cousin that was in a fraternity here in Lincoln, and somehow we ended up watched the second half at the frat house in Lincoln. So that was definitely my first memory of being in Memorial Stadium. We sat in the south end zone, to be exact.
So Jay's first game and first beer.
Yeah.
At 8, I'm kidding.
Yeah.
That's special to me too, Jay. That was my first Oklahoma game ever with my dad. So
yeah, those were good. Those were fun. Those Friday games after Thanksgiving and those battles that everyone knows and loves and wish we still had.
Elijah, that was the coldest game on the face of this earth because it was windy, it was wet, and my feet still haven't thawed. We were in the west balcony for it, and Calvin took a counter and scored, and these frozen oranges raining down. But it was butt cold. It was awful. It was so bad. It was miserable.
If it was still would be cold if it wasn't raining.
Yeah.
But also you pour rain on top of it. It was like 35 degrees raining all game. It was like the worst of both worlds.
It wasn't good. It wasn't good. Jay, last thought here. Gambling's come up, and I know Elijah and I have chatted about the instance of Alabama baseball and their former coach. And Elijah, you've got a probe with some Iowa baseball players that came out over the weekend. Jay, was that hammered home? This is obviously apps and pre-legal wagering in Nebraska, but how much of it was focused on? Because, Coach Callahan, I think I remember you talking about, that was a concern of his, but just something that was prioritized, just the dangers of gambling as a college athlete. You guys had like a seminar every year on that?
Yeah, you always, like, that was one of your seminars that you had early in the year. One of the first meetings of the night before, they did all sorts of things. I remember even having, is it Michael Franzese?
Yeah, Franzese, friend of the show.
Yeah. He talked to us, I think, my first or second year when Solich was there, and just talked about gambling, what to be aware of, people talk, just conversations that are, you got to be careful with, and even just offering, your opinion on how practice is going, who's hurt, who's not, like that can be viewed as, given advice, and to bettors or whoever it may be. So we had to be pretty careful. But to be honest, I never paid attention to the spread. I had no idea if we were favored, if we weren't favored. We just went out and played. I mean, we had, again, this was a little bit before, all the things you could get on your phone. But yeah, was never concerned. Never knew a point spread, nothing. And we just went out and played. Maybe some of the other guys, I think the guys who probably didn't play as much might have paid more attention to that. I don't know, but it was discussed. It was discussed early in the year. But other than that, man, I had no idea if if we covered, if we didn't cover, what the spread was. I had other things in my mind to be worried about.
Jay, we don't know the ins and outs of this whole Iowa situation. We don't know what they were betting on, if they were actually betting on. This is just a probe at the moment. But when you look through the past year or two in sports, you've had the Calvin Ridley situation with the Falcons, now with the Jaguars. You've had the Jameson Williams situation with the Lions. And I want to get your thoughts. Do you think that players should be allowed to bet on games that don't involve them? Say you're a college football player and you bet on the NFL, or you're a college baseball player and you bet on the MLB. Should that be cracked down upon with the same kind of fervor that it would be for point shaving or fixing your own games?
No, I don't think so. That's stuff you can have unless you have, someone, there's former teammates that are on an MLB team or NFL team, maybe, that's given some sort of advice. But it's still pretty, there's a reason why those casinos are in Vegas. They're 9 times out of 10, they're winning. But I have no issue if you're a college player and you want to bet on the NBA or Major League Baseball or NFL, zero issues. It just gets obviously a sticky situation when you're on that level and you're betting on your own games or just just the insider information that you might have to games across your sport in an NBA, MLB, or even in college. So I think that's the fine line. But I don't have any issue. I don't think it needs to be cracked down on if a 20-year-old that has a few bucks wants to place 100 on the Nets winning at +5 or they're plus $500. No problem with it. And so it's touchy. It's a sense. It's very sensitive, but you just got to be careful.
Well, the thing that you don't want to have happen is all of your NIL money going goodbye, because you, as Michael Franzese put it, says, "Hey, we take credit. You can bet on credit with us. You can't at the casino." That's the one big difference. Jay, we'll let you get to it, man. Awesome to chat with you. Thanks for giving us a few minutes today.
Yep, no problem.
Big thanks to Jay Moore. Get the podcast, Spotify, iTunes, Google Play for the audio. The video portion will be posted to the Hail Varsity YouTube channel. Always can catch the show, the Hail Varsity Radio Twitter feed at HVarsity Radio. Also, highlights of the show retweeted that way as well in the evening or the next day. Catch Coffee and Cream, Damon and Andrew. 7 to 10 weekday mornings. We're on 4 to 6 to get you on the way home. Nebraska has put a offer out for the 2025 quarterback, and that's Blake Herbert. That went out this afternoon. He is out of Central Catholic, Massachusetts. He's 6'3", he's 205. And Coach Satterfield was in on him. He's out on social media. So he's a 3-star quarterback, pro style. Connecticut, UMass, Rutgers, Virginia. Some interest also from Virginia Tech, Tennessee, Clemson, Wake Forest, and Penn State. And that's the 5th quarterback to hold an offer for Nebraska in the 2025 recruiting class. Film-wise, just a sophomore. Sat's got recruiting pipelines in a lot of spots. Nebraska's going to clearly look heavy and hard at Texas. They'll look in-state for sure. I really liked what Coach Barnett was saying last week. And when it comes to how you stack your quarterback room, the best thing to do is try and find an in-state kid that wants to stay and play in Lincoln. A little different situation with Flores and Keelan. Those are two, not only regional, but two kids down the road from you that are gone. That hurts. You still have Harburg, that's a Kearney Catholic kid that's super talented and you think he'll get developed here the right way under Satterfield and company. So you have that to groom as the heir apparent, perhaps, or at least a chance to have a shot at that starting job at some point, not only this fall, but beyond, when the Sims era, if it is the Sims era, gets done. So, but yeah, they are looking in Massachusetts. That's also the last state Nebraska sent an offer out to when they had whip here with his connections back east.
They had Pop Watson.
Yep.
Who they had committed.
I think Pop ended up Virginia Tech, didn't he?
Yeah. But it's interesting. This is the way recruiting is now. Quarterbacks, their recruitment starts picking up somewhere after senior year or somewhere after sophomore year, which is crazy.
We'll wind down a Monday. Hail Varsity were presented by Currency.
And now, back to Hail Varsity Radio.
One final time on a Monday, it's Hail Varsity Radio. Good stuff from Jay Moore, Charlie McBride, and Coach Mark Waller as they've got their Junior Day recruiting fair going on with the Lincoln Football Coaches Association. That gets underway at the Firethorn Resort here in about 10 minutes or so. And that's awesome to get programs connected with high school coaches and players. That's awesome. A lot of years that's been happening, 8 years and counting with the Lincoln Football Coaches Association. Tomorrow on the show, of course, Nebraska baseball resumes 7th inning action against Creighton around 5 o'clock. That means we're probably not on in Omaha tomorrow, which we'll pick things up on Wednesday with you.
And remember, if you're in Omaha and you're like, oh man, where's Hail Varsity Radio? You can always find us streaming live. Hail Varsity's YouTube page or also the Hail Varsity Twitter page at HVarsity Radio. Go find us there, stream us online live, or get us in podcast form afterwards.
Yep. We'll chat it over. Jabba Chamberlain, get a preview some state baseball for us. His thoughts on Creighton, Nebraska. Tom Chattel going to join us. Tom's got a project he's working on when it comes to celebrating 100 years with Memorial Stadium. We'll talk some memories with Memorial Stadium. We touched on it a little bit with Jay Moore tonight. So Tom Chattel with us. Mitch Sherman from The Athletic will get us kicked off in the 4 o'clock hour tomorrow. Numbers to get in, 489-1240, 489-1240. Emails, chris@hailvarsity.com. And that's also ways to get in touch. Brennan chimes in with a great idea because it is feeling like summer already. And a trip out to Spearfish for golf, Deadwood. Listen, I love that part of the world. It's been 21 years since I lived in South Dakota and had about 4 trips out west for state basketball and college football and college baseball coverage when I was working for Dakota State. So I love getting out there, but I haven't been to Deadwood. I went with my father-in-law, my future father-in-law, to Costner's Casino, and promptly we just donated money at the blackjack table in Deadwood. So, no, I'd love to go golf and Spearfish, Brennan. We will, it'll be fun. Get out there and do a show.
I tell you what we should do. You ever been to Toadstool? Out in the Panhandle, the park?
No.
Ooh, I say we go up there. We stop for a quick night of camping.
I'm not camping. There's a joke there.
You're missing out on the camping.
No, I am not.
Sleeping in a tent. We'll bring some Fireball. It'll be great.
No.
We'll roast some steaks over an open fire.
No.
Tell me that doesn't sound like the best time you've ever had.
I know it sounds like an old Milwaukee commercial. Okay, which is great.
I won't bring the guitar. It's okay.
No, that's fine. I have no interest in sleeping in a tent outside. I'm a wuss. There it is. Don't like outdoor sleeping. I don't like sleeping on my couch, and I get to do that 3 times a week.
Well, I was like, enough Fireball in you. You don't even care where you're sleeping.
I get the method, but no, I will. We'll have to get an RV. Uncle Andy, if you're listening, you need to get a new RV.
I think you need to try tent camping again.
No. I'll tell you the story and why that I'm a no tent camping guy.
Off the air?
Yes, it's got to be off the air so we can be back on the air tomorrow. We'll talk to you at 4 tomorrow. It's Hail Varsity. Thanks for tuning in. We're presented by Currency.